Hello and welcome to the Spiraling Higher podcast, hosted by me, Sam, mindset and manifestation coach.
And me, Gina, your biz and mindset coach. We're here to support you on your spiritual journey by bringing you intimate and raw conversations about healing, manifestation, consciousness, and spirituality.
We hope this podcast makes you feel less alone as you become aware of your patterns and limiting beliefs to uplevel your life, manifest like a boss, and together, spiral higher.
Hey, Spiralers. Today we are so freaking excited to bring you someone who has honestly recently changed our lives. Back in January, we both were asked to join a course to learn about something called the A.W.E method. We had no idea what it was about. We figured, you know what? It's new year, new us. Let's try something new. And we were brilliantly awe-inspired by what we learned from Michael Amster, who is joining us here today. He is a physician and awe researcher, writer, and teacher at the UC Berkeley Greater Good Science Center and has over 20 years of pain management specialty. And he's the founding director of the pain management department at Santa Cruz Community Health. And today he's here to talk all about the emotion of awe and how we can incorporate this into our lives, how we can activate it, and all of the benefits that we get to experience mentally, emotionally, and spiritually through accessing awe. So welcome to the Spiraling Higher studio, Michael.
Hey, thank you so much, Sam and Gina. I'm just so thrilled to be here with the two of you. And I am excited beyond words to meet your community of listeners. So hi, Spiralers. It's really awesome to be here together with you all today.
I was going to say, Spiralers, grab your notebooks because you're going to be learning one of the most life-changing acronyms. It's really easy to remember, but you're going to want to write it down because Michael's going to take us through what awe actually stands for, what it is, and how it's so life-changing. And so I'm curious to know, how did you begin to research awe? What is it? And what did you find out?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm a medical doctor, and I've been really interested about mindfulness probably for about 35 years. When I was in high school, I started developing test-taking anxiety. I was probably like the two of you, I was an overachiever, and I wanted to be a doctor since I was a little boy. And as I got farther and farther in my education, I started to experience anxiety around taking exams. And that kind of experience where your mind gets hijacked, we call it in Buddhism or in mindfulness communities, the monkey mind. And I experienced like the full panic of like my heart racing, my brain freezing, and literally being hijacked by the anxiety. And so I was at a turning point in my life where I either had to get on medication, like Xanax or something, to calm my mind down, or get into a different route. And a friend recommended meditation practice, mindfulness. And I went on my first retreat, and it totally changed my life. And I finally came to a place of deep inner peace and calmness that I had never experienced before in my life. And so that set me down a pathway of eventually becoming a mindfulness teacher. And I've been teaching mindfulness practices to my patients for over 20 years. And about 5 years ago, my colleague, Jake Eagle, who's a psychotherapist in Hawaii, we had a conversation about how we were both noticing that our patients really struggled with finding the time and the effort and energy to meditate every day. And so initially we called this body of work, we called it microdosing mindfulness. We had these ideas of like little microdoses of mindfulness throughout the day. And I'm in California, but Jake lives out here in Hawaii. So I flew over to Jake's house and we spent a week together exploring what would be this ideal brief mindfulness practice. Like if you were to just spend 15 seconds to have a moment of mindfulness, like what would be the most efficient, awesome, life-changing experience that would give you a taste of what the Buddha talks about, this idea of nirvana, which is that state of like pure presence and joy and your mind standing still and time expanding. And that is actually what is the emotion of awe. When we have a moment of awe, and if you could think about it, all the listeners out there, of a moment of awe you've had in your life, And often what comes to mind first is an extraordinary moment of awe, right? Like you might think of incredible sunset or like being at the edge of the Grand Canyon or something, witnessing the birth of a child. Those are all extraordinary moments of awe. But what if we could learn to train our eyes and our ears and our nose to live every day and to experience awe in the ordinary? And that's when we came up with this idea of the awe method. And it's the acronym of the word awe, A.W.E, and it's these 3 steps. So we came up with this technique. We tested it out in a pilot study with each of our groups of our patients. And then I approached UC Berkeley, the director of what's called the Greater Good Science Center. His name is Dacher Keltner. And we refer to him as the granddaddy of awe because he started back in 2003. He wrote the first paper about actually exploring awe as its own unique scientific emotion, positive emotion. And then from his work, we sort of piggybacked on his work and we did 2 very large studies studying the awe method and its effectiveness in about 500 participants between the 2 studies, showing like really profound decreases of depression and anxiety. For example, one of the studies, actually both studies showed about 35% reduction of depression in patients who practice this. And all we did was ask them to practice this awe method for about 15 seconds, 3 times a day. So literally in just doing this 1 minute a day over a 3-week period, we saw a 35% reduction of depression and similar types of results with decreases in anxiety and loneliness and chronic pain. Because of that, we wrote the book, The Power of Awe, and I get to be here with you all today. So that's the story.
Well, thank God you went down that path because like Sam said, this really did change so much of our perspective. And I love how, like, even that term microdosing, I love that that's something you can just capture at any moment of your day. And it actually reminds me because I often love to go out into nature and be in front of the ocean and the big sky. And I started kind of seeking that out all the time just so I could have that relief or that sense of that awe. And then I had this moment of realization of looking out my window. Instead of seeking like, I have to watch the sunset to get that feeling, it was like this download I got of it's the same sky. So if I just look out the window, it's the same sky as the sky that I'm seeing at this beautiful sunset. And I can still access that feeling even with this 2 inches of the sky, or even just seeing a patch of grass, that I can still access that feeling. And so it's really what reminded me a lot of your method. So because we've been talking about awe so much, I would actually love for you to explain how you define it in your body of work.
Yeah, great. So awe is an emotional experience that I think all of us can have some recollection that we've experienced before in our life. And it's simply what we call as an emotional experience in which we sense being in the presence of something that transcends our normal experience, perception of the world. So it's like you were talking about, you could, we all see sunsets on a daily basis if we go outside and look, but there's something about when we open up to experiencing awe, we're like paying a very particular attention to that moment that really transcends our normal perception of what a sunset is normally like. Maybe we're noticing the colors more fully or deeply. We're aware of like maybe the breeze that is coming off the ocean, and we're feeling that kind of touch our skin. All those can be a really profound moment of awe for us. But what's we have found in designing this awe method, and like you said, it's a miraculous practice because with traditional mindfulness practices, you typically feel like you need to be in a quiet room and you need to focus for 5-10 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever your teacher says. And then if you find your mind racing and it interrupts your meditation, you start to beat yourself up and you feel like you're a failure. What I love about this practice is it goes everywhere we go in our lives. We can have a moment of awe in line at the grocery store, checking out and be in awe of like, what? There's like 30 different types of bubblegum flavors out there. Like, how awesome is that?
Yes.
And be in awe of like connecting with a stranger, be in awe of being at a red light and just like looking out the window and seeing a bird pass by, or being in awe of just the design of a stoplight. Like imagine if our lives didn't have stoplights, like the chaos we would have out there in the world. So awe is like literally all around us all the time. And that's the beauty of this practice, is it's portable and it's sustainable. And the more times we know from our research, the more you dose awe, the more benefit you get. So I love your example that you can tie in like these past moments of awe you've had into the current present moment. And that's definitely one of the practices we encourage people to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, before we talk a little bit more, because I'm so curious to know like what is actually scientifically happening in our brain and body when we're experiencing awe, I would love to break down the awe method, because awe is an acronym and an actual word and emotion. I would love to hear you break down the actual steps and what awe stands for so that people can write it down for themselves and start practicing.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to share the awe method. Okay, so I just want to give a little disclaimer. I know that when I listen to podcasts, I'm usually driving in the car. So if those out there, just be safe. We don't want you to have what we call an orgasm. That's like extreme awe where it just kind of blows your circuits. Because sometimes the simplest things will be pretty orgasmic. I've had these really profound moments of awe, just like making a pancake, or I was working in my garden the other day and I found these amazing wild mushrooms. It's just like, wow. And looked at the gills and it was like really powerful. So welcome to come to our website, thepowerofawe.com, where we have a free downloadable guide and meditation if you want to go deeper into the practice. So the practice is very simple. We use the word awe, A.W.E, break it into 3 words or 3 steps. It's actually 4 words. We have double credit for the letter E. So A stands for attention. I'm going to talk you through it and then we'll get to practice it together. So we're bringing our full undivided attention to something that we value, we appreciate, or find amazing. So in the space you're in right now, you can just like open your eyes, fully open your ears. Maybe there's sounds of a bird or something that's a beauty that you can see that really captivates your eye, and just fully be with that, like letting go of all the other thoughts of things you have to do in the day. And then the W stands for wait. And it's a pause. It's just like a simple, short pause, but it's actually a gift to yourself. It's like a really big gift. In our world today, we're so busy, we're distracted by our devices, our attention is drawn in so many directions all the time. We're gifting ourselves this protected moment of self-care, self-love. This like really an opportunity to relish and enjoy this moment. Like you're letting the awe marinate into your bones. Soak it in. And then the E is 2 things. So after about 10 seconds or so, and you don't have to time this. I mean, this is just a very organic process. After a breath or 2, take a nice inhale in and a longer exhale out. And we can even do that all together right now and make the sound awe when we let out our breath. And immediately you can notice like this shift of your consciousness, like you just feel so much more relaxed. And it's because our vagus nerve, which is one of the master controller computers of our autonomic nervous system, is attaches to the bottom of our diaphragm. And that extension of the chest wall and retraction literally is like resetting the autonomic nervous system and creates that sense of peace and calm and ease. And then the E also stands for an expansion. And the idea is to let that moment of awe really fill you up. Because I'm sure if you recollect back to a really profound awe you've had in your past, maybe you felt like the hairs on your arms kind of stand up, like you feel a tingle or a chill. So you just want to let your physiology play that out and like, okay, let this expand and fill you up as an experience of awe. So now that I've talked you through it, let's practice this together, like right now. Listeners, and to the 2 of you, Sam and Gina, let's do this. So we're going to start with bringing our full undivided attention, something that we value, appreciate, or find amazing. Just take a moment to be with that and just to pause, to wait, to really soak it in. Then take a nice inhale in and a longer exhale out. Letting that expand and fill you up. And if your eyes are closed, just gently opening them, noticing how you feel, and coming back to the present moment. How was it for you guys?
Like a break from my crazy mind.
Well, what did you focus your awe on?
There's actually a little bouquet of flowers that I received for my birthday last week. So surprisingly, half of them are still really going strong. So they're just in my windowsill, and I'm amazed by the sacred geometry of nature. So I was just looking at all the different petals and just thinking. Actually, I wasn't thinking. I was more just admiring,
and noticing.
wow, noticing. Um, and that's actually something I'm curious about with awe, because I've noticed that it's a type of consciousness that's very nonverbal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we say things like, "Oh my God, that sunset like took my breath away," or like, "I have no words," right? We say things like that. And so I'm kind of curious, is our mind, I guess, being like deactivated as we're focusing and generating awe? Like, what's happening to our mind? Where's it going?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, there's different things that are happening in our physiology when we have a moment of awe. So, um, as I talked about when I described the practice, we are like literally using our breath to reset our nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
The autonomic nervous system is running 24/7 without our even conscious awareness. It's what controls our breath and our heart rate, our digestion. But it also links into some very ancient parts of our brain. They call like the reptilian brain, that fight, flight, freeze response when we feel under threat. And the reality is, in our modern day lives, even though we're not under physical threats from like a tiger chasing us, or unlikely, from a shark swimming after you in the ocean, but it we feel like we're under threat all the time. Like we're just, because we live in this what we call safety consciousness, and we are experiencing like that we're under threat. So the awe method definitely resets that part of our nervous system, but also we see a slowing down when we have a moment of awe of what's called the default mode network. That's the monkey part of our mind, that racing part of our mind that focuses always on the past or the future, or it's like the daydreaming, ruminating mind that's just always there. Awe takes us to the present moment. And that's a very powerful state of consciousness. And then what I think is just one of the amazing parts of the whole story, is that there's bigger effects on the overall health and physiology of our bodies, and that awe lowers inflammation. And this has been done by my colleagues at UC Berkeley, where they had people experience different positive emotions and then drew their blood levels and looked at what are called inflammatory cytokines. And cytokines, which I won't go into a lot of detail, but they are the most ancient cellular communicators on the planet. So this is like a moment of awe right now. I'm giving you an example of what we call conceptual awe of concepts. And like, if you just think about the origin of life on this planet. So life's been around for about 1 billion years. And when the first single cellular organism started coming into being on Earth, they communicated with each other with these things called cytokines. And there's basically two types. There's safety cytokines, and then there's threat cytokines, meaning that the organism felt safe versus friend versus foe. Think about it. Our nervous system, our immune system is built upon this same idea of safe versus threat. I mean, everything in our physiology is kind of worked into this type of design that's ancient. So our immune system is still working on the same ancient design of safety versus threat. And so when we're in our daily lives and we're particularly under threat, like if you face racism or, different types of forms of of hatred or challenges that we face on a day-to-day life basis based upon different factors of who we are as people, then we're always under threat. And then it causes inflammation in our bodies. Well, awe is the only positive emotion that actually lowers these dangerous cytokines, these threat cytokines. And so in the bigger picture, awe improves our health. It lowers rates of depression, of cancer, of heart disease. It's like it's like one of the most important and crucial of all human emotions. Yet sadly, in our modern day lives, we've lost the art of being connected to awe on a daily basis. Our ancestors lived in awe. They were intimately connected to the natural world. Ancient religions and spiritual practices were like intertwined on a daily basis, how people interacted with the natural world. And our human survival was based upon awe.
Hey, Spiralers, quickly interrupting this episode to tell you that the wait is over and we are finally enrolling again for our life-changing 6-month mastermind, The Unlayered Self. Within this coaching container, you get to work in conscious community and with both of us, one-on-one.
It's the only offering where you get 2 coaches, one-on-one time, group coaching, and in-person retreats, with our intention being that you get the best of everything when you commit to breaking generational cycles and healing the relationship to yourself.
It's truly the experience that we had always wanted at the beginning of our healing journey, but we've talked about it enough. We wanted to share what our client had to say when we asked her to look back on her 6-month transformation.
6 months ago was probably like the hardest time in my life. And I haven't felt that way since the last 6 months. Like I feel so distant from what I felt then, with like how I felt towards myself, how I was treating my business, how I was treating myself in my business, how I was moving through life with every outside variable of like family, like nothing felt solid ground. And so when you brought us back to that, my nervous system couldn't go back to how I felt. Like I just felt so calm. And I started to get like emotional and even now too, because I've grown so much that I don't think I'll ever like be in that space to feel like so shaken up. Like I feel so whole and at peace. And reflecting back at that time, it's coming from a place of like love and compassion than from like hurt and like helplessness. So I'm just feeling very whole. I don't know what this life would be like without you guys.
If you all had the chance to see and experience her pre and post unlayered self, you'd be just as amazed as we are. If this mastermind is calling to you, you can get all the deets and apply by clicking the link at the top of our show notes. We begin the journey with an intimate group of conscious women on May 28th, 2024.
Now, let's get back to the episode. It seems so crazy to me that obviously we developed to have this state of consciousness, and like you said, our ancestors lived in this state of consciousness most of the time, and like you said, interacted with the natural world. But most of us are not living in the state of consciousness. I feel like I can confidently say that, right? We're all very stressed. We're even trying to be productive from that stress. And so I'm kind of curious because there was something we learned when we took your 4-week course, and it was the different modes of consciousness. And so what I understand, and maybe what our listeners are beginning to understand, is that awe, or the emotion of awe, sort of induces this state of consciousness that is really characterized by deep presence, appreciation. There's a slowing down. We're not fearful. I would say fear is actually completely absent in a state of awe. But we're not always there all the time. So what are the other states of consciousness that we might be inhabiting? And what are the hallmarks of those? I think this will be really helpful for people listening to understand, like, which state of consciousness am I existing in?
Mm-hmm.
How can I become aware of that? And then I can know maybe when to apply the awe method to my situation.
Right. Yeah. So this work around 3 levels of consciousness is really the life's work of my co-author, Jake Eagle. He's a psychotherapist, and he came up with this model out of a desire to help people, because he does therapy with people, and found that traditional forms of psychotherapy were really limiting, because the therapist was coming at the problem from a place of safety consciousness, which is like this mode that we talk about we're living in 99% of the time. But if we can enter, which we can learn how to do, and the awe method is one way to go to a higher level of consciousness, then the problems that we face in our daily life at the higher level of consciousness, we see them in a completely new light, a new way. And then we have new solutions. It's a brilliant model because people stuck themselves like for their whole life. Like you can spend your whole life retelling your stories of your trauma and how you're a victim and never get out of that. And if anything, those storytellings just reinforce those identifications stronger and stronger. And so the beautiful thing about this model is that we can get out of that. So let's talk briefly about the 3 levels of consciousness. So the level that we spend 99% of our time in, and particularly in the West, is in safety consciousness. And I just want to say it's not necessarily that safety consciousness is a bad thing, because there are aspects of safety consciousness that are productive. When I'm, like busy at work and I'm seeing lots of patients and I'm helping them and I'm like making my kids their breakfast in the morning and I'm being productive. I mean, that's one aspect of safety consciousness, but the other aspects of safety consciousness are when I'm feeling stuck and I'm anxious and I'm anguishing about things in my life, or I'm feeling depressed and I'm like ruminating about things in my life, or I feel under threat and I'm feeling scared and my heart rate's up. Those are all within the realm of safety consciousness. And if you're a visual person, you can kind of think of this like the chakra systems. I'm sure a lot of you or listeners are familiar with the chakra system. So like it has for those that you don't know, but it's like the human body, if you think of an image of the body, and then there's the lower level chakra down in the groin, and then there's one in the heart, there's a heart center chakra, and then there's one above in the brain, above the head, which is like the highest level of chakra. So the 3 levels of consciousness are sort of like in these 3 zones. So above safety consciousness, the next level up is heart consciousness. And you can think of it laying within the heart. And when we feel connected to our heart, we're often in a place of gratitude, feeling appreciative and grateful for something. And so we can access heart consciousness through the emotion of gratitude and appreciation. And we know through research, there's something called heart math, which is it connects to what's called heart rate variability. So there's research is all about that when we experience the emotion of gratitude and appreciation, that's actually their meditative mindfulness practice they recommend people to do, that our heart enters into a form of what's called coherence and heart rate variability, and it's actually healthy for the heart, the rhythm that it creates. And then the awe method, when we access the state of awe, we call that level spacious consciousness. And that's like the highest level in terms of, this is not being judgmental, by the way, but just if we think about it as a scale, going up or climbing up a ladder, awe resides within the realm of spacious consciousness. And we can access that level of consciousness through awe, through meditation, through prayer, through chanting, through like kind of deep flow states. When we do an activity, like if we're like really into playing tennis or surfing or swimming, we can get into that state where we experience that sense of oneness, that sense of connection, the sense of deep peace, the sense of timelessness, of pure presence. Now, the thing is, we can't live our whole lives out there in the world in spacious consciousness. It'd be, because we have to provide and have our homes and all that, and buy food and cook and raise families and whatever. But the thing is that us in the West in particular, we're just out of balance. We're spending way too much time in safety consciousness, and we need to spend more time in heart and spacious consciousness. So even if we can increase the ratio of our lives from 99.9% of our day in safety and maybe spend 1 solid percent or 2% in heart and in spacious consciousness, we will begin to see we think of like a trickle-down effect. And that then when we're living in safety, we are able to like have more calm and more ease and more presence because we have access to state of spacious consciousness or heart throughout the day. It's like I think of it for me as a medical doctor when I see my patients. One thing I like to do when I start my visits is I like to I ask my patients about a moment of awe they've had since I've last seen them. And I work in a aesthetically very beautiful clinic, and we have nice windows and you can see trees and the mountains off in the distance. And like often we'll look outside the window and be like, wow, that's like so awe-inspiring right now. We have a moment of awe together. And then I'm back and I get on the computer and I'm doing my visit, but I'm more present. I'm more calm. I'm practicing really better medicine because I'm not multitasking as much as I would normally do, or I'm just being more present. I'm more attentive to the patient's needs. They feel held, they feel cared for. It's a win-win. I mean, this is just this model that Jake created is really just such a gift to living a conscious life, and having power over that.
Yes. Yeah. I love it because I think it, number one, helps you, like you said, to know what state you're in. And I think that's probably just like the first step, right? Is just having that awareness. And I love that you didn't label it as quote unquote bad, because of course we need to be in that level sometimes. But I really love the way that this is really positioned because it is so portable. Also on a side note, like I wish you were my doctor. I wish my doctor asked me what awe moments I had at the beginning of every session. Because that would, I think, be really helpful, because to your point, it's almost like what I visualize as like static, right? Like I think a lot of us have this like static kind of coursing through our brains, through our minds, through our bodies, and having that moment just settles that, right? So that we can be more ourselves, more connected when we are in that consciousness. And so I love the way that you explain that. And I think being able to access the gratitude, I think it's more almost motivation, because I think in our world of the people that are in this work and that are doing this work, be grateful, right? Be thankful. It kind of becomes cliche almost. But I think when you think about it, changing your state of consciousness and physiologically changing you, there's more, reason to do that versus just this like kind of fluffy, just be grateful and think happy thoughts. But to know that it really changes you on that cellular level, I think is going to be helpful for a lot of people to seek that and to seek it more often. Because, my all moment when we were going through that was actually focusing on the computer. I think about technology all the time. And I'm like, how are we talking to this person that's in Hawaii? And we can hear you. And then people around the world are going to listen to this episode. And like that to me is so incredible. And even driving in the car, a lot of times we can be really frustrated in traffic. But sometimes I'm like, I'm sitting in a machine that takes me from one place to another, and I'm just driving this vehicle. Like that always kind of brings me back to appreciating the life that we have and the opportunities that we have available to us that, our ancestors just didn't have. And so that was one of my moments. But I just like love how this is so easily integrated into everyone's life, because I think a lot of people that we speak to do have challenges, especially parents, to meditate for an hour or half an hour or to do yoga every single morning. But to be able to bring this into little pockets of your day all the time to kind of recalibrate, I think is going to be really monumental for everyone, and something they can start right now.
So here's a really great way to start this for people is to ask themselves right now, well, what state of consciousness am I in right now? And, notice, kind of check in with yourself. Like, okay, I'm in safety. I'm thinking about I'm worrying about these plane tickets I got to buy this summer for our trip, or, like all these things that we're always doing in our mind. And then ask yourself, what state of consciousness do I want to be in right now? Like, where would I like to be at this moment? So like, here's an example that happened to me, even as the author of the book, I still of course spend most of my day in safety consciousness, but the model is more complex than we're talking about here a little bit. But one aspect of safety consciousness is like when we feel stuck and and I'm currently, yes, I'm in Kauai. It's an incredibly gorgeous place, but we're here partly for work because we have 2 homes that we Airbnb out here. So we're on our drive into the main town, Lihue, which is an hour away, and there's traffic and we have a whole to-do list to do. And I'm in the car, like talking a million miles a minute, trying to like take care of business on the side while driving. And my wife calls me out. She's like, hey, what level of consciousness are you in right now? And I'm like, I'm in like Uber safety right now. And what would you like to be in? She asked me, and I'm like, oh, I want to be in heart consciousness. And like, I looked out the window and I'm like seeing the beauty, and I'm just feeling appreciation for the fact that we have this like privilege of owning homes here and get to like be here part of our lives. And an instant, like literally it was like, boom, like in an instant, I didn't have to think more than a second and just feel into the appreciation and notice some awe that my voice changed. Like instantly, my shoulders dropped. It's like, I relaxed. I was like really happy and enjoying things. She's like, well, can you now? The next question was, can you take that level of being in heart consciousness and bring it back into safety while you're making your phone calls and you're like taking care of all these to-dos and the tasks we have to get done? And it was like really life-changing. It was like, yeah. So we can, that's the beauty of this model, is like we can go into heart and bring those gifts back into when we're back into safety, and it changes how we are then living our day-to-day life. And what we
like bringing a souvenir from one consciousness to another.
And it's this is the microdose, right? This is what we're doing here, is we're microdosing heart and awe and spaciousness, and we get to bring that souvenir, that gift, back into our day-to-day life. And then we're better parents, we're better, children, adult children to our aging parents. We can contribute better at work. We're better leaders. We're better, doctors, podcasters, everything we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can totally see that just from my own experiences of kind of moving into heart or awe consciousness and then doing my things from there. Because we tell our clients all the time, it's really not about what you do, but the energy you do it from. But I think one of the traps, I suppose, I want to address that keeps people from this, and this is what I see in most people, is they think that through the performance of more actions or like the hustle from safety consciousness, that's what will get them into the other form of consciousness. If it's, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, oh no, like I can't meditate right now because I have to like do the groceries and I have to get the gas and it's like everything needs to be done first. But it's so ironic that it's actually that you need to access the state first. And then that will influence all of those, to-do list things you have to do and imbibe it with a lot more heart energy and spaciousness to where it doesn't even feel stressful potentially. But what would you say to someone who is aware now that, oh, like I'm totally in safety, like I'm stuck, I'm like worried, I'm constantly trying to get things done. But we want to move them obviously into a different state, but they feel like they can't until all of the things are done.
Yeah, that's great. I love how you're setting up the scenario, and it's very familiar to me of exactly what you're talking about. And if you remember in the course you guys took, our online course, we talked about this idea of presence versus force.
Yes,
and
we did.
the basic idea for the listener is, and it's really a powerful concept. People might think, okay, well, I need to force and try hard to make awe happen. And what we've learned from our research and what people's experiences is that the harder you try to access a moment of awe, the more you push and try to make it happen, you're actually inhibiting awe from arising. Awe is like the best teacher we all need, like every day, because awe teaches us to live with presence versus force. You have to learn to let go and relax, like look for the space, the gaps between our breaths, the gaps between all this to-doing that we fill our days in, to really experience awe. It forces us to live our lives in a much more healthy, grounded way. So, in terms of what I would advise your listeners is that, in many ways, we're kind of living a lie that we have to do all these things. We feel like we're under threat. We feel like we're being literally chased by a tiger when we feel like we have all these to-dos to do. We have to accomplish this and we have to make this happen and squeeze everything in a short amount of time. And as a result, like we're just adversely impacting our health. By living in that much stress all the time, we're increasing our rates of heart disease, of depression, anxiety, loneliness, of cancer. I mean, all these horrible illnesses that we're seeing as a result of our supposed privileged lifestyle is like making us all sick. So At some point, we have to be owners of our lives, of our destinies, and begin to make conscious changes and choices. Like, okay, what level of consciousness am I in right now? I'm in like super spazzed out, uber crazy safety right now, and I'm freaking miserable, and I'm getting sick, and I'm burning out, and I'm not happy, and my marriage is falling apart, and life freaking sucks. Or do you want to start to live your life in awakened conscious way of like, okay, I want more ease, I want more presence, I want more space. Awe has taught me like so much to learn to like slow my life down. And I'm like happier than ever before. I'm like funnier than ever before. I'm more playful. I have more balance. I'm actually, I think, physically healthier than I've been in a long time because you can't cheat awe. You can't think you're doing it and like, oh yeah, I can hack this thing. And because like we're all about hacking, of course, when we're living in force, making like tricks.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. You sound like you're talking about me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a bit older than you guys, you know. My kids just graduated college and I just turned into my 50s and a little bit of a different place. But I'll tell you, like I was on the hamster wheel my 20s through medical school, and then my 30s building up my career, and 40s doing more stuff and more, you know, advancing career and writing a book and research and all that. And I'm really grateful for having those experiences. But you get to a point where you just start to realize you're exhausted and it's impacting your health, my mental health, my physical health. And you have to learn to really reset everything and like reassess how you really ultimately want to be living. And just so grateful for this practice because I'm just like you know, I'm a big, I'm a multitasker, hacker extraordinaire, or at least I was. And it's taught me the most important lessons that really are about living the most precious, beautiful life is around living one in the constancy of seeing every day with wonder and awe. I love this quote by
totally.
His name is Abraham Joshua Heschel. He's a kind of a well-known rabbi, and he was contemporaries with Martin Luther King Jr. Like if you see the old black and white picture of MLK walking across the Selma Bridge, and on his side is a guy dressed up like a rabbi. This is Abraham Joshua Heschel, and he's known as sort of the awe rabbi. And he has this quote I love. He says, "Our goal should be to live life in radical amazement. Get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed." You know, it's all to be a spiritual person is to live life in amazement, to see the world with childlike wonder. Yeah.
Yes. It's a lot like romanticizing your life in a way. Because even when I always talk about this, but like making my daughter's lunch every day, I'm like, oh. It's like never ending, all the meals we have to make. And, but I switched that where I'm like, wow, I'm literally nourishing my child and, you know, noticing just even like the way the knife works as I'm cutting the cucumber and really just being there to notice it. And everything you're speaking to really reminds me of something we often say to our audience and our clients, which is that you can't solve a problem from the frequency of the problem. And so many of us are in stress and we keep on trying to solve the stress from stress. And so what you're speaking to is, yeah, like let's go on a little consciousness vacation to, you know, the heart or the spaciousness and be able to bring that back in instead of trying to hold on, you know, clutching to the stress. And, you know, we can release that to grab for something else that's really within reach. And so, yeah, I love what you're speaking to there because it sounds simple, but the effects are so profound. And it really only takes you one or two times to try it out to notice that difference. Because again, for me, my mornings completely changed when I stopped thinking about how stressed out I was and how rushed I was and how annoying this is, and to instead actually thinking about the appreciation that I even have a child to like feed. It's pretty freaking amazing. Like I grew her in my body and, you know, to birth her. And now she's here. And I remember, you know, when she was just on like ultrasound and she was just like this little bean. I remember thinking, oh, I can't wait to like hold her hand. And now she's just sitting there like having a full conversation with me. So really to like you said, slow down enough to notice what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I came about this method when my daughter was in high school, and you're going to see how fast this all goes by. It's like incredible. Like it's like
I know.
But I was there, and what's beautiful about this practice, one of the aspects of experiencing awe, and this has been scientifically proven, is that our perception of time slows down. Like we get to experience the moments of our lives richer and deeper, and so time expands. Literally, this fullness and richness. And so I was so grateful I had this the last few years she was home for going off to college, because I felt like that in a good way. That last year in particular was like so rich and long and just enjoyable, and I relished it. And it's a complete change in consciousness, like you said. Like now, making the meal for your daughter can be a moment of awe. Like you can be in awe while you're preparing her school lunch.
100%. And it's something that she witnesses and observes and actually also embodies, because there was one time it was pouring rain and we were rushing to school because we were late. And I was actually driving on the highway and my tire blew out. And I could just see my tire in my mirror just like flipping. And I was like, I can't stop on the highway. I have to just make it to the exit, which is probably the worst thing I could have done. But I just wanted to make it to the exit so we could park. And I just sat there and I looked at my daughter and I said, well, like, what do we do? Because it was pouring rain and we were still pretty far from school. And she said, you know what, like, let's just walk and we'll get to have more time together.
Aww.
And I was like, that's so sweet. And she said, we never get to walk to school. We're always driving there. So this gets to be our first time walking and we get to walk in the rain. And I said, you're right. And that to this day is something we still talk about. And so I think, you know, for any parent out there, us modeling this is really going to have an effect on our kids, where they'll be able to see things through that lens of heart or spacious consciousness versus just the stress and the problem.
Yeah, I was actually really fascinated by that, Michael, back in January when we were taking the course, the whole expansion and collapsing of time.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty obsessed with that. If anyone's listening, they know I'm constantly teaching that time is an illusion. Like when you feel really consumed and victimized by time, it really is such a sign that you are in that safety consciousness, because you're right. When you're in a state of awe or spaciousness, it doesn't really seem to be of a concern what the clock is saying. It's almost like the idea of a clock completely dissipates. And so, of course, I want everyone to engage in practical clock time for the purposes of, for example, us meeting for this podcast. But do we need to feel constantly victimized and behind the clock? Is that even a real thing? Like, how do we be behind? It's like, it's really just our state of consciousness that creates that sensation. And it's interesting when you talk about the expansion of time too, because it reminds me of how people who have a lot of novel experiences within a year, they experience that year to be like quite long. Whereas people who have a established routine, they're kind of doing the same thing, because when you're in a state of newness or novelty, it forces you to be really present. It's like, never seen this before, like, or what is this new thing I'm trying? Like, you really have to be present there. And that's expanding time, which is just wild to think about.
I love what you just said, because you're talking about the idea of beginner's mind, which is sort of a foundational idea in meditation, spiritual communities, of like seeing the world in a new way every day. Like every day is a new day, and we can see the world with childlike wonder. We can see the world with a beginner's mind. We can see the world in awe and amazement. You might do the same walk every day with your dog to the park to go to the bathroom, for itself to go to the bathroom, you know, but you can make that an awe walk, and you can make that drive to your daughter's school or making lunch every day an awe experience. Maybe make it a shared awe experience, even better, because we know that awe is contagious. And in a good way. What we mean by that is when we share our awe with others, we inspire awe in them. And back and forth is a reciprocal thing. Like one practice that you might want to try doing at home before you pause briefly when you have your meal at dinner, is share a moment of awe, go around the table with everyone and like, what was the moment of awe you had today? And then it brings that awe into the consciousness of your life every day. And plus, like I said, when someone shares a moment of awe, it really does. It's like a catalyst or an inspiration of awe in you. Yeah, we actually have on our website, we call it the Moment of Awe page, where people can go online and post a picture or put some words about their awe. And it's a really wonderful thing. We also have a private Facebook group. If people want to join, you can find us on there and ask to join our group. But it's a community of people that are really committed to posting about awe in their daily life.
Yeah. And you know what? One thing I just remember that we didn't actually address is the ordinary awe, which is not actually necessarily this like crazy Grand Canyon sunset, like awesome cliffside moment. But like Gina said, like cutting the cucumbers. But then you also touched a bit on conceptual awe, which is the awe of an idea. But there was something else you taught us, which is about like the awe of a memory. So you don't have to necessarily be in the presence of like nature and beauty and wonder, right? You can actually find awe within your own self.
Yeah, so awe is accessible in a lot of different ways, but for the conciseness of our research and when we teach this to people is we talk about awe being accessible, and we're talking about the ordinary awe, like the awe in the everyday. This whole practice, by the way, is all about awe in the everyday. That's what's unique and special about the awe method, is that we use the awe method to access a moment of awe in the everyday. So we talk about 3 different categories. One is awe of the senses. So, opening our eyes, our ears, our sensations on our hands, like feeling the breeze on our skin, taste, smells, like those are the main senses. And so we want to often recommend people start off their awe practice with awe of the senses because it can be the easiest thing to access. And then we talk about awe of concepts. So it's like I shared about the cytokine story, or the fact that, here we are all on our computers. I know you guys are in Canada and I'm here out in the island of Kauai, and there's literally no gap in time while we're talking. We feel like we're like next door to each other. I give you guys literally, I feel like a hug. And that's like mind blowing. And that's an example of conceptual awe. Or the fact that, we're a few thousand miles apart, but we look outside and we can see sunlight coming in. Like the sun, 100 million miles away, is creating the light that I see here in Kauai and the light that you guys have in British Columbia. I mean, it's like, wow, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And then the third type of awe that we teach people to kind of focus in on is awe of connection, of interrelationship between other people, like our loved ones, our children, our parents. It could be a stranger we meet at the grocery store. It could be our pets. I mean, our pets are wonderful sources of awe. And of course, there's other forms of awe. I mean, but these are just sort of categories that we like to help people learn the practice. It's sort of like training wheels, so to speak. And what's really nice, what we find that happens, a few things I'll just sort of think that are really awesome about our research and what we found in our studies is that one thing is that the more times you dose your awe throughout the day, the more benefit you get. In medicine, we call this a dose response. So it just sort of makes sense that the more times that you have these micro moments of awe, the more benefit you'll have throughout your day. We only asked people to do it for 3 times a day in our research studies, but we found that the more they did it, the more benefit they got. Another trick to making this really work in your life is what we call habit stacking. So when you already have a habit you do throughout every day, like for example, I make coffee first thing in the morning, I use that experience of making coffee or drinking the coffee as a moment of awe. I'm probably making the same type of cup of coffee, but every day I can have a different experience of awe with that cup of coffee. So bring awe into your daily life when you're having your meals, when maybe you're taking a shower before you go to bed. Routines that you do on a daily basis, just attach an awe moment to that. It can just be done anytime in any place. Yeah, it's that simple. And then share your awe. I mean, it's really a gift to share awe with other people. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I'm amazed by the emotion of awe because I used to think that the emotion I liked the most was happiness. Like I just love feeling ecstatic and joyful. And then I'll never forget, Gina and I were in Palm Springs at one of our retreats as hosts, and we were looking up at the sky and we saw all these shooting stars. And I was like, no, this is my favorite emotion. And it's like, it's awe. It's that wonder. It's that like, how do we get here? Like, this is crazy. Like it's that, but I'm not even thinking those words. I'm just feeling that. I'm just feeling that this is wild that we exist here at this time. And it is a state that expands time, and it's nonverbal. And like you said, it's so contagious. And I'm so grateful that you've created such a concise, easy, everyday method where people can put their attention on something, wait for about 10 seconds, and then exhale and expand into that moment. And then they can practice it as little or as much as they want throughout the day. So I'm just fascinated by it. And I'm curious now, Michael, what sort of additional research are you guys working on now with respect to awe? Any new findings? Anything else that you're testing for?
Yeah, well, we just finished a study at the end of last year. We're working on our data analysis, but we studied teaching people the awe method that have long COVID symptoms, which I can't really talk about the data results yet, but it did, we saw good benefit, and it all makes sense. It kind of completes the picture more for us, because we know that awe decreases inflammation in the body. And so if you think about a lot of the symptoms that people have from long COVID, they're inflammatory from cytokine response. So we're looking at maybe studying this with heart disease as well. People that after they have a heart attack, they have a lot of inflammatory cytokines in their body. So it's exciting. Yeah. Just to keep this growing. Myself and my wife, Alana, she's a yoga teacher. We're leading an awe retreat in Mexico in November.
Wow.
So at this really phenomenal eco resort called Chinalani, just south of Puerto Vallarta. So people are interested in experiencing a week of awe and really diving in through the sensorial pleasures of Mexico, of the food, of the beauty, some supportive yoga. We're doing interactive practices to really build your awe practice so you can take it back home. Alana's a professional surfer, and so she's going to do some surf lessons for people that want to learn how to surf. So it's going to be a really fun retreat and great community. If people want, go to our website, thepowerofawe.com, to learn about it. Yeah, so just filling my life more with awe and spaciousness, and getting to teach people like you and connection, community, they just bring me so much joy. I'd love to, I know we're closing soon. I'd love to read a little bit from the book, our close.
Yes,
epilogue.
yes, please.
You guys, we have the time.
Sure.
Any other questions you have before
Please do.
I look it up?
Well, I was just laughing about the surfing, because I was like, the first thing I've done anything water sport related was paddleboarding, and I just sat there and Sam just rode the whole time. So that was my moment of awe, to just be floated by her, but also just how contagious it is. It reminds me of kind of just it just keeps multiplying, right? When you are in an awe moment and somebody else sees that, and it just kind of keeps on multiplying within us, but also the people around us. One of my favorite memories of Sam was we went on this nature walk outside, and she was obsessed with the trees. She's like, no, I really love the smell of trees. And I said, okay, sure, whatever. But she I swear, shoved branches into her nostrils because she loved them so much. And it was just in that moment that I actually was able to appreciate the tree in a totally different way that I've never really done. And so I think between her and I, we definitely share a lot of awe moments, and it really is contagious. I can't not smile when she talks about something. And even for her birthday, I surprised her and I got to watch her dance. And that was such an awe moment for me, to just witness her in her element and just be in such joy, and to be cheering her on. And so I think so many of us are actually experiencing awe moments all the time, but to actually know that that's what we're experiencing, I think it's going to shift a lot. So yeah, thanks to Sam for all the awe moments that you've given me.
Aw. You're welcome. You've given me a lot too. And now that people know that that's what they're experiencing, they can also try to channel more of it. It's actually not something that only happens randomly. You can bring your attention to those ordinary moments, like Michael said, and just experience the actual physiological benefits in your body, and then the improved consciousness that you bring to all the things that you include in your life. But I would love for you to read this passage, Michael,
Yes.
from the Power of Awe
I just
book.
want to say I'm in awe of the two of you.
Mm.
I'm really in awe of your friendship and what you've created, this community of, bringing people to an elevated level of consciousness because this is what I want to talk about in my reading the epilogue, is that the work we do, the work that you do, isn't just about ourselves and making our own personal lives better. It's about making the world a better place. Like we need to advance the consciousness on this planet for us all to survive and to solve the problems that we're facing. We can't solve these problems from safety consciousness. We have to get into these altered states. Like that's why psychedelics are becoming really big right now, because we can really heal like post-traumatic stress syndrome and other types of massive traumas that we're holding on this planet by accessing spacious consciousness through A.W.E method, through psilocybin, whatever. So this is all like such an important body of work that we're all doing. So thank you so much for being here and what you've done. So I'll read a little bit from the...
Thank you.
Receiving that.
But thanks. So the A.W.E method is more than a self-help technique, and the implications of A.W.E go well beyond personal transformation. A.W.E touches everything, and most telling is the effect it has on others. We're wired to attune to others' behaviors and moods. Our nervous system senses the emotions of those around us. Just as being the recipient of a warm smile can lighten our mood, when we're in awe, those around us feel it too. Awe is contagious. And so practicing the A.W.E method is one not so small way we can contribute to the world. In this book, we've covered how the A.W.E method is grounded in science and that a whole body of science supports that awe changes lives. And so we have a big symbol crash ending to the power behind the simple practice of the A.W.E method. If practiced frequently enough, by enough people, a critical mass as it were, everyone would experience a significant heightened shift in consciousness. Awe changes us, and when we share our awe, we change the world. How can we be in awe of someone and physically or emotionally harm them? How can we be in awe of the natural world and destroy it? How can we be in awe of life itself and not live as if every day were a miracle? In awe, the tone of every conversation, from the personal to political, shifts from having an agenda to being open and curious. Our conversations impact how we raise our kids, how we help our aging parents, how we treat our spouse, how we participate in community, how we mentor or supervise people, how we govern a city, and how we lead a nation. We can think of no downside to practicing the A.W.E method because awe is the light, the appreciation of nature and different cultures, the curious and open mind, the generous and giving soul. These days, we need awe more than ever. So awe awaits you and surrounds you in the ordinary moments of your life, like the view of the stars that fill the night sky. Awe is free and always available. All you need to do is pay attention to what you value, appreciate, and find amazing. Wait, and then exhale and expand into the unlimited timelessness of awe.
That's so beautiful. I would say I can't believe you wrote that, but you're an incredibly smart individual. So I just felt really actually in awe of those words. And so thank you so much for bringing The Power of Awe, which is the title of that book. If anyone's listening, you can grab that. We'll put the link to it in the show notes. Thank you for doing the research behind it, for writing the book for us, for bringing this conversation to our community today, and for doing the work you do, not just for yourself, but really for the consciousness of the planet. We're so grateful for you.
Thank you so much. I want to call you my sisters, spiritual sisters. Thank you so much. I'm just so in awe of our conversation and loved being here. And please keep in touch.
Yes.
Absolutely. We thank you, our spiritual brother. And to our listeners, we'll make sure you can find out about Michael's work more on his website, the retreat he was talking about, and like I said, the book, because there's so many more incredible like patient stories of what happens with awe and more of the research. And there's just so much more to this work. And we're so grateful that We got a taste of it today. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much for listening to this honest conversation. We hope it brought you peace, clarity, and a little bit further along your spiritual journey.
If you loved this episode, it would mean the world to us if you left us a 5-star rating and a review so we can bring you more conscious conversations, spiritual topics, and guests.
And we lovingly invite you to join our free Spiraling Higher community by clicking the link in the show notes to continue this healing dialogue and share with us how this episode impacted you.
Come on in, introduce yourself, and meet your conscious besties in a safe space for healing conversations between us and other like-minded people on their healing journey.
Here's to Spiraling Higher.